This one part is more of the study. All right. Ready when you are.
Hi. Hello everyone, I'm Ben Chafee.
I'm Erin.
I'm Graham.
And I am HI5.
And we're here to talk about our final presentation, or our final project for human-robot interaction. So, we are doing our experiment. We initially did a couple trials in NSH, just upstairs on the 4th floor, to kind of get a feel for the setup and make sure everything was running okay. And it worked pretty well. So we moved over to Skibo to try to decrease the bias of technical and robotics people. However, when we were in Skibo, for some strange reason, there was Bluetooth interference, and so between my computer, which was controlling the robot's voice, and the robot, something happened and its voice was really choppy, so we ended up, we decided we should move outside in order to ensure there wasn't interference. So we left Skibo, and our final location where we did the vast majority of our experience was in Hunt, right outside Hunt Library, at this kind of corner here. I don't know how many of you are over in that neck of the woods, but that's where we did the experiments. So this is kind of what it looked like. The robot was right by this sign. There's another row of bushes over here that I was kind of like crouched behind with my head peeking out so I could actually see what was going on while controlling stuff. So we did a little over 59 trials. We ended up throwing out some because we didn't get all the data down because of all the chaos and trying to record everything with only 3 people. But we did it, we did it kind of randomly, and here we had a few more SAD trials and a few more neutral trials than the rest of them. We were aiming for about 10 trials per emotion or response.
To be clear, the emotion is displayed by...
This is what the robot says.
Okay.
So you'll see some examples of that in the video I have here in a couple minutes, or in a minute, where the robot would either be like happy that its arm broke, angry at the person for breaking its arm, crying, like screaming in pain. You heard these in our other presentation. Or just neutral response, which is high five received, arm broken. So, we weren't really trying to balance this that much. So you can see here that we had some more men than we did women. For the future, it might be better to try to take that into account. And so basically, the robot would come up and say something like, it would say this.
Come on, give me a high five.
And then the user may or may not give it a high five, and if it does, its arm breaks off. I'll show you some video, or a video here of an example, or a couple examples of them. Oh, I forgot to hook up the sound, you can't hear it. Whoa, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me try this. Sorry, guys.
Where was the camera? Was there
Thank you, Graham. Try one of my...
Yeah. A lot of people were taking video anyway, so Graham kind of pretended to just be one of the, pastor video. You can't really look that suspicious at all.
Right. We tried using a camera that was mounted on the sign, but it was this wireless camera that we borrowed from the MRSD labs, and it had horrendous resolution, and its frame rate was like unbelievably awful. So we ended up doing this on the second day because of how horrendous it was.
Not yet.
Do we have sound?
It's on the display here. We'll try for 30 seconds more, and then just turn it off and go that one. Yeah, right there.
Oh, it's
Whatever. We'll just do this.
Yeah, just
Sorry, guys.
unplug it and turn off your laptop as much as possible.
No, this is as high as it goes. They can see it. Oh, yeah.
It's not.
Sound. Why is I'm not hearing anything? The detached.
You might have to
Test the
Well, forget it.
Yeah, just
The robot is going to be your center. Okay, I'm going to try to play them at the same time. We'll see how this goes. This is the last attempt. If all else fails, we're not going to have this. Okay, here we go. Ready? We're going to try this.
There you go.
Nice.
No.
Oh,
So there was another group there that was prompting him to fix it. So you'll see here, it is very hard to fix this arm. We realized we made it a little bit too hard to fix. I'll show you their valiant attempts to repair this thing.
how many?
We only had a couple people actually successfully fix this arm.
But if they find out how to fix it, are they going to know that it's kind of like a tree?
So they didn't succeed. Sadly, we didn't have a video of someone actually succeeding in fixing it. So now I need to get to the next slide somehow. There we go. Alright, so after the experiment, Graham and Aaron would chase the person down and give them this survey, which has 6 questions. You'll notice most of these questions are Likert scale questions, and then there were 2 free response questions. We'll talk more about these in a little bit. And then also, Graham and Aaron would document some things like the gender of the person, what the robot's response was, whether they tried to put the arm back on or not, where it was located. So those are some things, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. So I'm going to turn it over to Aaron, who's going to talk about the results of our experiment and our analysis.
So the first survey question we asked was, how much do you like the robot? And as you can see, the majority of the people like the robot, regardless of what the emotion was. As expected, people tend to like the happy robot more than the angry robot. And it's surprising that the most people like the robot a lot in the neutral trials and the least in the sad trials. We believe this is because the robotic voice is a little bit off-putting, especially in the crying trials. The crying sounds a little weird. And in neutral, there was the least amount of speaking from the robot, so it was less off-putting, and that's probably why we see this result. However, we did a statistical analysis with chi-square, and the p-value shows there's not really a statistically significant correlation between these two. This p-value tells us there would be about 60% probability to be wrong to say that there was a correlation. So our second question we asked was, how believable are the robot's emotions? We would have liked to see most people saying very believable, which is obviously not the case, but at least we don't see the majority of people saying that it wasn't believable at all. It was it was a wide variety across the board, which really tells us it's more people's personality, whether they're willing to pretend that a robot can have emotions. Let's see. So we did another statistical analysis found there wasn't really any correlation, even though you can see there's general trends. People tended to find sad and in pain the most believable, and they bizarrely said anger. Most people said anger was not believable at all. This is possibly because it was funny, which took away from the reality of it actually being angry, and it could also be that people just don't like the robot as much and didn't want to rank it highly. So our third question, or our third Likert scale question, this was actually our last question, how sorry do you feel for the robot? We didn't want to ask this question early on, because then people would be primed to think about being sorry. So as you can see, people felt the least sorry when the robot was angry and mad at them. And they tended to feel more sorry for the robot that was in pain and crying. But once again, when we performed the statistical analysis, we got a p-value that told us there wasn't really any statistical correlation between these two. We would need more data, and also this tells us that it's more based on people's personality again than really on the robot's emotional response. So another data point we looked at was how many people tried and succeeded to fix the robot. interestingly, the highest number of people trying was for angry. That's surprising because people tend to not like the robot when it was angry, yet they still tried to fix it a lot. And possibly this is because the angry response was very entertaining. People wanted to actually stick around and continue interacting with the robot. But there's a lot of bias in this data here because of the percent of male versus female and technical versus non-technical. That really throws off our data for the different trials. Like, you can see that most people tried for hangry, but we also had the most men, while the women kind of just like stared at it, were like really nervous to even like try. So there, you can see trends here, but once again, it's not actually statistically significant of a correlation, even though you can see some trends. So looking at the percent of men versus women who fail, it's interesting to note that while the people who tried was a very big difference in number, the people who actually succeeded was pretty similar. So women only tried if they could actually succeed, and it was kind of the same with the technical versus non-technical. But again, no real statistical significance here for trying or for succeeding. So moving on, we had to one of our free response questions. We asked, how did you feel when a robot's arm broke off? And some typical responses were laughing, feeling sorry, or scared, or shocked and surprised. Some people did personify the robot and actually felt sorry for him. Like one person said, I was sad and I wanted to help him, but a lot of people saw him more as an object, like the person who said that they felt sorry for the creator and not at all for the robot. Here you can see a graph of the different typical responses. Most people felt, a lot of people were happy. It's funny that actually not many people reported feeling happy and laughing, because if you look at the videos, basically everybody laughed, but still a lot of people said that they were feeling bad in terms of being scared or sad or worried they get in trouble. So there wasn't actually very many people who actually felt sorry. This was kind of a flaw in our experiment and really shows that people see robots as property and not really as its own entity that can be injured. It's more hurting somebody's property. So
5 minutes.
okay, moving on to our last question. Why or why didn't you help the robot? We did have a few people who did attribute why they helped it to what the robot was saying and its appearance, such as because it talked, it sounded like real pain, it was crying, he berated me, or the hanging arm was too much, it just looked really pitiful. Which we actually found that it looked so pitiful that even when it wasn't saying anything, people would still come up and try and help it. Some more typical responses were, well, I broke it, I'm responsible, I need to fix it, and then a lot of people said they didn't try because they just didn't know how, or they thought bizarrely that it's a robot and it would be able to fix itself. Actually, several people thought that. It's interesting. Yeah, here you can see a graph of how that data was spread. It was spread pretty evenly, or spread out a lot across all the different emotions, so there really wasn't any statistical significance linking the emotions to why they didn't want to help. So yeah, you can see here based on when I take out the splitting it up by emotion, most people just felt responsible, as I already mentioned. So that about covers it for our results, and now I'll hand it off to Graham to talk about our challenges.
Thanks, Erin. So our first challenge was to find a location. We couldn't do it indoors because of Bluetooth problems, and doing it outdoors, it was cold. So, and we also had a hard time finding a good place to hide Ben behind the Curtain of Oz. We had some apparent design flaws in that, like, the cameras didn't work. And just like this thing kept breaking on us, like regardless of the fact that it was intended to break, it actually broke sometimes. PVC and wood aren't the best materials. So camera challenges, like we said, wireless camera failed, kept crashing, didn't have any sound attached to it. The phone camera, you couldn't do this at the person the entire time and think it's covert. Interface did not work as well as we thought it would. Data collection, people would put check marks in the space between the numbers rather than actually circling the numbers. This could either say broke it or believe it. I'm not really sure. I'm pretty sure it says broke it though. We couldn't really link the surveys to the actual video that we could record, which is problematic. Some interesting observations that we had were that like people would actually high-five the robot without any prompts. So like clearly this is a good thing to get people to high-five it. And people would actually fix the robot even though they didn't break it. So after someone would leave, other people would come and try fixing the robot. Fascinating. Lots of people said that they thought it could fix its own arm. A few people said that they were worried that it would break it more. And people tended to walk away from the neutral reaction sooner because it was not talking continuously. So it didn't have anything more interesting to say. Even though they tried to fix it equal amounts for neutral as much as other emotions. So some important takeaways. People generally felt more guilty about breaking something than empathetic to the robot. The pain generates more empathy than anger, or rather accusation, because we were in fact accusing them of breaking the robot than rather saying, I'm angry that my arm is broken. And groups generally acted as one, either all fixing the robot, or all not fixing the robot, or all walking away. Group mentality. So some things to improve. Need to work on that gender bias, we wanted to actually fix the experiment like we said from before, get the video working properly, find some good places to hide, try to eliminate the cold factor. God, that was cold. Also fix, see about some better emotions, and with that I'd like to pass it off to HI5, who will tell us about some funny stories.
Thank you, Graham. During one of my angry responses, the guy fixed my arm. However, after I called him a jerk, that jerk broke my arm again. I could hardly believe it. Also, another person told me to shut up when I was angry at him for breaking my arm. How rude. However, when a girl heard me crying, she said she felt sorry for me and she thought my t-shirt made me more human-like. I don't know if I should take that as a compliment. Also, when Aaron said poor robot to me, the girl began profusely apologizing. In one trial, I accidentally made a baby cry. I was giving a happy response to make him feel better, but it didn't seem to work. The woman said I scarred the baby for life. It made me sad. Another thing to note is that many people laughed when they broke me. I can't believe how inhumane humans are. Well, thank you for listening to our presentation. Please direct any questions to my creators. They will gladly answer them for you.
Alright, so it looks like there wasn't a whole lot of statistical significance just because just lack of participants, or
Yeah, there were a lot of variables.
there's a lot of variables to record. I think one of the most interesting ones was where people were sad in the surveys. Do you have that slide? And then it seemed like it was approaching statistical significance, where people
Yeah, you
acted.
definitely can see distinct trends.
Yeah, you can see that people acted out, or the robot acted out in pain. No, sorry, it caused people to be more sad for the robot, something like that.
Yeah,
How did you feel for the? Yeah, this one. You can see if the robot was in pain. Yeah, then more people felt very sorry. So I think that's interesting. I think it's an interesting result. Like if you have designed some robot, you don't want people to mess with it. If you have it like display pain, people could.
It didn't surprise me at all that people didn't feel sorry for him when he was angry, because it was calling them like a jerk and saying they were stupid and they were an idiot. Like, it's hard to feel sorry for something that's like insulting you. So, John?
Did y'all try to do like pairwise comparisons between, like say just compare happy and angry to see if there's a correlation with just those two?
No, we actually didn't look at just pairs. That's a good idea. We could have done that.
Yeah, in hindsight, it looks like you guys tested a lot of different variables
Yeah.
So it might have made more sense. You like either expand the number of participants or you want to shrink down how many you test to see.
Exactly,
Yeah.
if we want to actually get
But
statistics.
yeah, it seems interesting. So what were the big ones? I think you already touched upon it. Like, what were the biggest changes that you saw, or the ones that approach statistical significance?
I just keep thinking the most surprising results is how people responded so well to neutral. But yeah, definitely, our results are really what we expected. We saw people responded more empathetically to sad and pain, less so to angry and happy. It was really interesting that on the surveys, when people interacted with the happy robot, they said they felt happy. When they interacted with the sad robot, they said they felt sad. So they were definitely being primed by what the robot's emotions were, which shows us that even when people said it wasn't very believable emotion, it obviously was because they were picking up on it. So that was an interesting result, I thought. And then I don't know, the fact that like overall people felt guilty, and yet we did have people who said specifically they felt sorry for the robot. So it's not like nobody felt sorry for the robot, and that still shows. Like you almost had 50% of the people in the neutral trial, which is surprising, it was a neutral trial, saying they felt sorry for the robot, specifically for the robot, not for the creator. That was a very interesting result.
Andrew?
You would have had more statistical significance if you had only like 1 or 2 people rather than crowd interact with the robot, or
That's true, yeah. That's another bias we have to control for the fact that the group definitely just changed the whole element, like people affecting how each other would interact. And, it would be nicer if there was a more controlled experiment and a more controlled environment.
Something that was interesting about the groups that's not recorded here is in many of the groups, the person that broke the robot was not the one who fixed it. They would like run off like terrified, and like someone else or a couple other people in the group would attempt to fix it, which I thought was very interesting.
do you think that's because they wanted to interact with the robot, or?
I think that lots of people really wanted to like see what all the robot could do. Like people stuck around to listen to the robot and like start filming like what it was actually
A lot
saying.
of Snapchats, yeah.
Yeah,
Like, I need to get this.
there are quite a few people that would stick around for the next trial.
Yeah.
And yeah, like we said, for the neutral response, because it said arm or high five received, arm broken, and then nothing after that, people would just tend to walk away if they didn't have anything to stick around for.
Yeah, and despite her not saying anything, people still, in the neutral case, you can see, a lot of people said they felt sad. And I expected that in the sad trial, but when it wasn't saying anything, it was weird to see a lot of people say they're emotionally sad. And I think it has a lot to do with just the appearance of the robot is enough. You don't even need it to be saying anything to get these results of empathy.
And I forgot, what was the original research question that you were trying to answer?
It was, how does the robot's emotional response affect the level of empathy that people have for that robot?
So with that question in mind, what would be the biggest recommendation you'd give to someone that's designing a human-robot interaction system from this experiment?
To go with pain or sorrow if they really want empathy, and not angry. People will not feel sorry for the robot at all if it's being mean to them.
I think
But they will stick around to interact with it longer, so that's a trade-off.
And they'll still probably pretty much fix it no matter what.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they seem more
half of the time.
determined to fix it in the angry case.
I think what we also noticed was that appearance really made a difference
Yeah.
other than just what the robot was saying, because like they've mentioned, people will give it a high five and attempt to fix the arm without it saying anything. So I think like it was a personified robot, they could see that it was broken and so they tried to fix it. So I think appearance really plays an important role
Yeah,
in
and like
how
with the
people interact with the robot.
Like with the girl who said that the t-shirt made it very human-like and made her feel more sorry for it, I think going with the humanoid robot definitely helped. Like if it looked like, I don't know, a Roomba or something, people would feel less bad because they don't personify that at all.
On that same kind of line of thinking, I'm curious if you think, if instead of a robot it were a person, and instead of a high five it was like, look at my vase I made, and like when the person handed it, like, it breaks, you break the vase. It's like fixably broken, I guess. Like I happen to have some glue here.
Yeah.
Do you think, I guess I'm asking if you think that the person experimenter would be different than the robot experimenter. An angry person would get a different response than an angry robot. A sad person different response than a sad robot, etc.
It'd be a neat experiment to try.
Well, I think that's kind of a hard example because once again, you're dealing with property with a vase. They feel bad for, breaking your vase. It's more of a guilt for ruining property than like I actually legitimately feel empathetic for your loss or your injury.
And conversely, it'd be very, very weird for a human to say, "Oh, cool, you broke my vase."
Well, then again, it's kind of weird for the robot to say, "Great, you broke my arm. You're so strong. This made my day." Yeah, that's kind of weird too.
Can I give the robot a high five?
Sure.
Cool. There's
Now let's see if we can fix it.
Oh, the whole
You
thing
broke
came
my arm
off.
You idiot, what did you do that for? You are so cruel. I hate you.
People came
I
off.
can't believe you would hurt an innocent robot like me. You are so mean. People like you
It was
deserve to
supposed
have
to be
their
the
own.
last
Oh, the wire broke.
How am I supposed to high five
he
you?
really broke it. All right, Candyland, you guys want to set up?
Sure.
And one last topic. I agree with you guys. Like the control of the experiment is difficult. It's hard when you do a natural experiment like this. Individual versus group makes a difference. And I think one of the big things too is, Graham, if you're observing anybody, even if they don't think you with the experiment, people act very differently if they have a camera on them than if they don't.
Yeah.
So that would be one of the big things. Yeah. But cool.
Yeah, that's why Graham only filmed like 5 of the trials. The
Okay.
vast majority of them we were filming it because we were trying to use that webcam.
Okay.
Yeah, but even like day 1 versus day 2, we saw a lot more people succeeding in fixing a robot. It might have been because one was a weekday, one was a weekend. On the weekend, people like stuck around longer to fix it. But there's just so many elements that were creating bias in our data that we should have controlled for.
Yep. Good job, guys.
Last time.
It came out there.